from Trifecta Fitness. We're proud to be Clarksville's new Get Fit headquarters. Trifecta Fitness is a state-of-the-art spin and strength training studio. Our spin studio is truly one of a kind in this area, complete with 20 state-of-the-art live fitness bikes and an incredible sound system. Our strength training is done in small groups of 6 or fewer, and all of our strength and spin classes are scalable for every level of experience. Come see us in the heart of Clarksville, just behind MAPCO at the corner of Old Trenton Road and Wilma Rudolph Boulevard. Call us for more info at 931-542-6265 or download our Trifecta Fitness app for a full list of upcoming classes.
In October 2019, Arlington, Texas was chosen to be the home of a new national museum, unlike any other. The National Medal of Honor Museum will be a unique home of military history. The 100,000 square foot museum will house exhibits, archives, and artifacts relating to the 3,500 U.S. troops who have been awarded the medal, the nation's highest honor for valor in combat. The museum will have 31,000 square feet of galleries dedicated to U.S. troops who have received the award. The museum CEO, former Navy SEAL and NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, said the museum will focus on education as much as preservation. The building will have 5 areas dedicated to Medal of Honor winners from the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard. The main gallery will be located in a central plaza under a 25,000 square foot slab of steel, which will appear to be suspended in midair. It will be supported by 5 pillars. Black Rifle Coffee is a corporate sponsor of the museum, as are the Dallas Cowboys. The museum's board also includes over a dozen major corporations and 6 Medal of Honor recipients, including David Bellavia, Patrick Brady, and Britt Slabinski. Army Staff Sergeant Bellavia was awarded the medal for clearing an entire house by himself on November 10, 2004, as a squad leader in support of Operation Phantom Fury in Fallujah, Iraq. He killed 4 enemy fighters and wounded a 5th in close quarters battle. Army Major General Brady flew and coordinated the evacuation of 51 seriously wounded men during a firefight in Vietnam in January 1968. Slabinski, a Navy SEAL chief and team leader, led a rescue team of SEALs during Operation Anaconda in Afghanistan in March 2002. Slabinski and his team flew to a mountaintop ambush site to rescue Petty Officer First Class Neil Roberts, who had fallen from the back of a helicopter. Slabinski led the team through almost constant combat against an entrenched Taliban force. Along with the board members, former presidents Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama serve as honorary directors. The museum is expected to open to the public in late 2024.
All right. Welcome back.
MisFitNation. MisFitNation. The MisFitNation show.
We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their stories to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the Misfit Nation. If you're a musician or an actor, our audience needs to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share your tips with the Misfit Nation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you are a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and show how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you are a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and share your story with the Misfit Nation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or feel embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you are a new listener, welcome to the Misfit Nation show. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app. Also on our YouTube channel at @the_MisFitNation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date on our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show!
All right. Welcome back to the Misfit Nation. It's our Sunday after dinner show. Hopefully everyone had a great weekend. got to spend time with family, friends, enjoy the last games of the Olympics. Congratulations to all our teams that won this weekend: the women's soccer team, women's basketball team, the men's basketball team, the water polo team. I think got bronze. We racked up some medals the last couple of days. We got our first weightlifting gold, I think, ever this weekend. So good job to all the U.S. athletes that were out there for the last 2 weeks or so in Paris, giving it your all and wearing a USA on your chest. As always, when we start our show, we pay homage to those who we've lost and as our first responders that we know of. This week, since the last show, there's 3 more that popped up on the database. The first one is Patrolman Troy Floyd of the Summit Police Department in Mississippi. His end of watch was August 8th, 2024. Sheriff Roy Sonny Weatherford from Sumner County Sheriff's Office in Tennessee, end of watch August 2nd, 2024. And Deputy Sheriff Hunter Reedy, Smith County Sheriff's Office, Virginia, end of watch August 9th, 2024. Please keep their friends, their families, and all those who care and think about them in your thoughts and prayers as they go through this tough time. Tonight we have a good one. Our guest is a retired U.S. Navy veteran. He's a life coach, business consultant, and a published author. In alignment with his Native American heritage and spiritual gifts, he is also a seasoned holy man, spiritual advisor, and a healer. As a guest speaker, he will openly and candidly discuss how he confronted his fears, anxiety, PTSD, and suicidal thoughts. He brings a wealth of wisdom, actionable information to you, the Misfit Nation. So without further ado, let's welcome D. Paul Fleming, U.S. Navy veteran, to the Misfit Nation. Welcome, D. Paul.
Holy mackerel, Rich. With that kind of introduction, I got to get you to do Reveille for me every morning.
Hell yeah.
That would be a wake-up call and a half.
I'll do my best. It's great to have you here, man. I know I think Willis connected us as he does a lot of his guests. He sends them my way and vice versa. We send them back and forth within the veteran sphere. It's great to have you here, and a Navy vet. My brother served in the Navy, so we accept you guys here as well. So thank you for being here.
Well, that's very kind of you.
So, D. Paul, I gave basically less than 2 sentences about you right there. If you don't mind, tell us a little more about you from as far back as you want to go to your journey through the Navy to how we got here.
Wow, what do we got, a midnight to 4 a.m. show going here?
We'll try.
That'll take a while. I'm getting old there, Rich.
Let's get the Cliff Notes.
Cliff Notes. So, first of all, thank you for that introduction. I hear someone like you kind of read off my bio, and I got to tell you, it's a little overwhelming. I almost think I'm a smart guy or something, right? So I'm an author now. Do a lot of the things that you mentioned in my bio. I've been doing it for a long time, but my path kind of started out where I wrote my first book, 2,442 Steps to Crazy. Kind of takes you through a pretty tough childhood. That book drops off at the end of the last chapter where I'm 14 and in a literal life and death battle, and ended up being homeless for a spell, kicked around the foster system, and finally got taken in by a local family, and went in the military at 17. I had a judge on one hand kind of encouraging me to bring some enlistment papers back to shut the prosecutor up. I write about that in book 2 of the Crazy series. It's a pretty funny story if you're looking back on it, but went in the military, did my thing, got hurt, didn't know a damn thing about what happens to you when you get hurt in the service, and spent an extended period of time understanding what it's like to go from the Navy to the VA, be retired on injury, not even understanding what that means, and any of the benefits that go along with it, and how to tap into that system, so to speak. Dealing with PTSD, I didn't know I had PTSD, but in the late 80s, early 90s, I knew there was something wrong with me. And I said to my wife, I said, listen, man, you got to find somebody for me to talk to. And it's got to be a broad, because I ain't talking to no guy. That's way, 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 way before VA was even, using the words PTSD or words PTSD. I'm an author, by the way, so kind of keep that in mind when I can't spell. But anyway, figured out there's something wrong with me. And then, 10, 15 years later, the VA said I had PTSD. I fought them cat and dog, right? Didn't want the label. Finally said, okay, great. How do we fix it? They said, you don't. I didn't accept that answer. And, eventually I found myself in a position of either I've got to finish this suicide thing or I've got to find peace. And, spoiler alert, you don't have to wait for one of my books. I chose finding peace. So, I'm not speaking to you as a ghost, right?
You're not an avatar like Tupac and Coachella, so it's good.
Right? Right? It's a good song, that Tupac, that story of Tupac.
Yes. So, I mean, like you said, it's not a spoiler alert. You're here. You were able to go forth with your life. You have the gifts. You said you had to do with the Native American heritage and spiritual gifts. You're a seasoned holy man, spiritual advisor, and healer. I know suicide and having mental illness is not something a lot of people want to talk about. And especially in different cultures, they don't want to speak about it at all. It's like voodoo if you want to talk about it, or if you say you have an issue. Did you have any of those feelings being of a Native American culture that you weren't allowed to have those issues, so you had to fight through it? Or was it just that you were just hard-headed enough to say, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to push through it?
Yeah, that's a big question. Let me see if I can, let me tell you what I'm sensing that I should say. As when I was a kid, I could see ghosts, I could see spirits, I could hear voices. Okay. And that stayed with me my whole life to this day. Now, if you go to the VA or mental health and you say, hey, listen, I hear voices, I see things, right? They're going to tell you you're hallucinating. They're going to tell you've got some serious issues. So I don't encourage anybody to go to their mental health provider and say to them that you see spirits. Now, again, I'm not saying that you should lie to them. I'm just telling you got to think about the consequences, because the VA has a, kind of an overly excited imagination towards locking people up who can see, their gatekeeper or the spirit guides that are around them, or the energy that floats around people, or hear messages, whether it's in your head or in your heart or in your ears. Anybody that's been through some serious trauma gets a peek. I always like to say this, they get a peek behind the veil, right? Because a lot of times if you go through a significant enough trauma, your spirit will actually separate from your body. And I use that example by when I was in the Navy, I got rolled down between the submarine and a surface ship, and I was, should have been dead. But in that instant, when I saw this foot and a half of water above me, and I see this guy that was supposed to be tending my line that didn't do his thing, and I remember going, you got to be kidding me. And that's it. Then next thing I knew, I was floating above the boat, looking down at myself and the chief of the boat and guys pulling me out of the drink. So when I write about it, or I talk to people, or I coach people on spiritual stuff and so on, and I say to them, people that have gone through trauma and say, I swear to God, I was out of my body watching. I say to them, yeah, I understand that. And my granddaughter Crow, her actual name is Dr. Joy Gray, part of the Navajo reservation. She's a powerful medicine woman. She does a great explanation of how the spirit can separate as an entity from the body. She does it both as a doctorate and as a very strong spiritual woman. So let me kind of close that down. For my journey through the VA, man, I had to bite my tongue and make sure I didn't say I hear voices, see ghosts, see spirits, see energy, see things, kind of foreshadow things, know things are coming, all kinds of stuff, right? So it made it an added challenge for me to deal with my own PTSD, because not only did I think I was crazy, but I was absolutely confident I was crazy.
You're damn right. If you go in the VA and you say any of the things that you said there, you're not going to come out of the VA that day, and probably not for a while, or not that specific office. You'll probably go somewhere else to whatever floor that they put those who are locked up away for inpatient. Sometimes it's 3 East, 5 East. It's always an East for some reason. I'm not sure why. but it's an east wing of a hospital that they put you in and lock you
in
up.
your neighborhood. It would be Coatesville, Pennsylvania. I can tell you the building number.
See? It's always east. I don't know why, but I worked in a Christ Hospital. It was 5 East for whatever reason. It locked up 5 East. Couldn't go in that hallway, but that's where you'd wind up in the VA, or they'd give you a bag full of drugs. This will heal you because this is what we know to do. This is what the checklist says to do at this time.
Hey, Rich, if you want to see some wild things, take the drugs from the VA.
They'll take you on a ride too.
I did it. I was on all that medication from the VA for a period of time.
Without even checking me, they just mailed me a bunch of drugs. And I took it right to the police station. I said, I don't need this. There's no way anyone can take this many drugs at one time and live and be functional. Let's get rid of this and try something different. And I went in a totally different path and found my healing a different way. So I'm glad you did too, obviously. So did writing the book helping to get your story out, help you to get your journey going forward?
Yeah, Rich, the most powerful thing I think I can say here tonight is telling your story is kind of my new mission statement. All right. Especially for guys and gals that grew up in a tough home life, because you're kind of pre-exposed to certain things when you go through a rough childhood. So I never talked about it. In fact, when I had written the book 2,442 Steps to Crazy, when it was published, I handed the finished copy to my wife, and she sat down and started reading it. And then she didn't talk to me for a few days, not because she didn't love me or not because she didn't want to, because we've been married, as I like to say, for 50 years, and I never said a word about my childhood, nothing. So when she read what happened to me and what I went through, the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "You were tortured." Okay. And that caught me off guard because I never looked at it that way until she said it.
Right.
But in 50 years, to bring it back to the point, I never talked about my childhood. I never told any of the mental health counselors I was with. Never said a word. All right. In fact, when my book came out about talking about my childhood, one of the former VA mental health therapists wrote a review, a 5-star review, saying how important it was, not just for me, but for all veterans, to talk about not just their military time, but anything that involves trauma, especially pre-military. So let me close that down for you, Rich. The most important thing I can do is say, yes, sir. Writing the book, telling the story has been among the most relieving things off of my entire existence. My physical, my mental, my spiritual, and my emotional bodies are all healed in some form or another from the moment I started writing the story to this moment right here where I'm talking about it once again.
Outstanding. And if you don't know, the reason why we started this show was to get veterans on to tell their story, to get that pressure off their chest and maybe keep them around a little longer. And this just solidifies that right there by you sharing that right there. And a lot of our guests who have come on and we're able to breathe again, I like to call it, when they come on and open up and actually share their experience that they went through that causes them the pain, the trauma within them, and they're able to breathe and move forward.
Yeah, I've had a number of vets reach out. Some of them I know, some of them I haven't seen in decades. And they said to me, your book stopped me from committing suicide.
Got a question in the chat from user Pent Up Rage 9 on X. I lost my battle brother to the darkness. What could I have done differently to help him? That's a loaded question too.
I'm not seeing the question, and I apologize, but say it again.
They lost their battle brother, so their best friend from the military to the darkness. What could they have done differently to stop him or help him?
Yeah. So here's what I'm going to tell you. A date with suicide. Okay. In the last chapter is titled "Who's Your Randy?" Okay. In the last chapter, I tell the story. the whole book kind of leads up to the Hoosier Randy. Why Hoosier Randy? Randy Smith, yeoman, second class, petty officer, submarine qualified U.S. Navy, hung himself shortly after giving me a call and setting up. Him and I were going to go see we're going to connect for the Super Bowl back in, I think it was 1990, 1991, somewhere in there. And, I hadn't talked to him in a couple of years. Called me up out of the blue week before. I said, great, let's meet in a week. I got a family. I'm trying to do this father thing. I'm married with a couple of kids now and so on. Anyway, called his house a week later. This is back before cell phones and all the internet and all that. And this lady on the other end of the phone starts screaming at me, swearing, cussing, raising hell. And again, finally I said, hey, who the fuck are you? Just put Randy on the phone. And then there's this pause. And she says, wait a minute. Are you the guy Randy called last week? And I said, yes. She goes, great. He hung himself right after he got off the phone with you. Don't call me again. And she hangs up the phone.
Wow.
That was my first formal suicide.
Wow.
Okay. That has haunted me right up until I wrote my book, A Date with Suicide. And I mean, haunted me. Once I started telling the story, right, it came off and out of me. And I realized in the course of telling the story that there was nothing I could do. It doesn't matter because, especially as veterans, the reason the title of the book is A Date with Suicide is because veterans have a habit of lining everything else up perfectly and then setting the date. So if we don't get to them before that date is set, there's nothing we can do about it. Okay. When somebody is that determined, it's just a matter of time. Okay. Now that people say that's a negative way to say it. Well, people also say that suicide is, what do they say? It's selfish.
Yeah.
And I say, well, I'm gonna tell you what. I know a lot of people will nod their head and say, yeah, suicide's selfish. Well, I'm gonna tell you something. The amount of pain that I was in when I was suicidal, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual pain, I don't wish it on anybody. Right. So coming from a person who sat there with the opportunity and the means more than once, suffering brutal pain, I don't wish it on anybody. So I'm not one of those people who can say it's selfish. I'm one of those people who can say, I forgive you. I understand. And may God have mercy on your soul. I hope you found peace. We don't. We have to suffer with it.
Right.
But that's not where I consider it selfish. Again, I'm coming from the amount of physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental pain that we go through to get to that point of setting a date.
And I've had no less than, I think, 7 young men on this show who served, who came within a pound of pressure on the trigger of killing themselves.
Yeah.
They came that close, and there was always something that intervened. It could be a kid in another room yelling, or thinking of their daughter, or seeing a vision of their kid, or just the gun misfiring in one case, and that saved their life and told them to come back to the light and do better things and be strong and dive forward. But there's other people, like you said, once they set the wheel in motion, it's hard to stop them. Had a friend last March, I believe it was, Paul Kludek. He wrote a post on Facebook at 4 a.m. Today I become part of the 22. And he said goodbye to everyone on Facebook as he killed himself. And he made sure he tagged his family.
Well, a week before my book, A Date with Suicide, came out, a guy I served with killed himself. Another vet's daughter killed himself. Okay. So I get it. And I feel the pain of the loss that you and everybody that's listening that has lost somebody are going through. I really do. We can address this thing, but we have got to be the leaders in this and stand up and say, listen, man, I sat there, right? I was opportunity and means ready, right? And I saw the same things that you were talking about, something, a misfire, a voice, a noise, a sound, every one of those examples that you just said spiritually tell me that you were taken to, those people were all taken to that point and then shown a lot of the stuff that I see. A spirit guide, a ghost, a friendly hand of God, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter what religion you like or whether you believe in, something more, a divine being or not. When you have those kind of epiphanies, you kind of got to go, all right, now what's next? Well, let me tell you, let's band together, tell our stories, get the word out there to the rest of our fellow veterans, because there's something else going on here, Rich. You got to think about this for a moment. The latest statistics show, and again, this is from just one study that I've been able to find in the civilian community, 109 deaths per day, okay, in the civilian community. Now, my math, my statistics, and all my research shows that there's 50 plus veterans a day committing suicide. All right. Now, those numbers are easy to prove, and I'm not sure we're here to get into that right now. But let's just use the number of 50. And let's just say that there's 109 civilians committing suicide a day. Who's leading the pack here? Veterans are what, 1% of the population?
Right.
Okay. So if 110 veteran or non-veterans are committing suicide, who's leading the pack? Well, think about it. What does the rest of the United States do? For the most part, they follow what veterans do, right? If veterans can't handle life and we're killing ourselves, look, man, we're making it easy for the civilians. So am I trying to lay a guilt trip on myself and other veterans? Nope. I'm simply saying what we do, they are following. We are already in a pandemic, but the rest of the civilian community is well on its way to a pandemic. And now here's the sad effing part. Once there's 200, 250, 500, whatever the number is, civilian suicides a day, that's when somebody's going to start paying attention. And you watch what happens. Mark this tape, guys. The U.S. Congress is going to turn around and say, well, what are the veterans doing? How are they trying to solve the suicide problem? And that's when we're going to shine a light on what has happened to our community.
Just got a message from someone on Twitter, another one on Twitter from A Tang for you. They said that you said the number is 109 civilians a day, thereabout, that are losing
That's
their
from
battle.
one study that I've been able to find.
But even with that number, in that number, A Tang is saying that there's probably veterans included in that number that don't identify as veterans or not known as veterans when it happens.
Yeah, I was very careful to check the study because I don't want to tip the hand on the study because there's a lot of work they're still doing on it. But there's only one study that I've been able to find. And to the best of my knowledge, you may be right, but I believe they did a decent job in weeding out veterans. Okay. Now, if you want to talk about the VA in 22, and then they claim it was 17 and so on, look at Operation Deep Dive. Christine's at Ease Veterans Magazine puts it out every quarter. Okay. The Operation Deep Dive, they tore that thing apart and rebuilt it on an 8-state investigation that's not only roughly, 6-7 years now they've been doing this, 7 or 8 years, in conjunction now with Duke University. They show that the number of 17 to 22 is 2.4 times off its kilter. More importantly, what veterans need to understand, that let's just say the VA is saying it's 22 a day. Let's just say it, okay? The VA only takes care of 30 to maximum 35% of the entire veterans population. Yep. So if you're not plugged into that 30, 35% of the population, you're not being counted. More importantly, they discount overdoses, okay, accidents, okay, high risk, you name it. The VA system has put so many loopholes in what you can count as a suicide that they literally say, well, there's really 17 a day and 13 of those are by guns, and we're going to take the guns away. Now, I don't want to get into a gun discussion, but here's what I'm here to tell you, okay? Bullshit, all right? The majority of suicides by veteran is not by gun, period. Full stop. Don't believe me? Ask the guys that are fucking committing suicide. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear. Ask the guys that are leaving their notes committing suicide and then do the follow-up. Car accidents, hanging, jumping in front of trains, you name it. everything but, and I'm not saying they're not killing themselves with guns, but you understand what they're trying to do.
Yeah, trying to hide the number. Yeah.
Hide the number and blame it on guns so they can take the guns away from veterans, which is counterproductive, because if you go into lockup at VA voluntarily, you say, listen, I need help. And I encourage you to say, I need help. First thing you're going to do is take your guns away for 6 months.
Yep. And they'll ask you how many you have. So,
that's right.
yep. And where they're stored.
That's right.
They know the check mark questions to ask you and how to get to your house. So they're already on that. The number, like you said, it's at least 44 a day for many studies I've read, and it's 44 a day counting the real non-traditional understood suicide methods. So if you count like all the things you were saying, adrenaline kills are a lot of it. A lot of guys and gals that were coming back from war, and a lot of the number is Vietnam veterans too, that are still battling with the demons that they never got taken care of, and they do things that are, well, let me drive my car off this cliff, or drive this car as fast as I can around this curve, and it's not going to make it, or go do this X, Y, and Z, and bad things occur. And that will never be counted unless there is a note saying, I am a veteran and I'm committing suicide.
Yeah, how many veterans, have died from insulin overdose?
I have no idea.
Oh, I do. Yeah. I do. I have veterans flat out tell me I've tried.
Wow.
Yeah, they won't tell the VA, but they've attempted suicide by insulin.
Wow.
Period. Okay. Oh, I'll do you one better. I got a friend of mine who recently came to me and said, I got to tell you something. I'm gonna leave it at that because I don't want to break confidence.
Right. I just seen I think it was a documentary on the insulin overdose. It was that one of those roommate murderer things, and that's how she was trying to kill her, doing insulin shots into her. At night, she'd fill her with insulin to try to kill her, and that's a horrible way to go.
How many veterans have died by alcohol poisoning?
A ton. Yes.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Listen, veterans know how to drink. They know how much to drink, right? They also know how much to drink to kill themselves. So you're not going to pull any wool over my eyes by saying, out of the blue, a veteran went from drinking 2 fists of scotch a night to 5 in one night, and he wasn't trying to kill himself? Come on, man.
He wasn't trying to end something. Yes.
Right?
It's usually him or herself.
You know how much you need to drink to get to that point you're at, right?
Definitely.
When you double it or triple it, that was attempted suicide, if not suicide.
You're attempting to do harm to yourself at that point. For whatever reason in your mind, that's the best way. Also a horrible way to go. So where do you see, I know Date with Suicide, great read, 2442 Steps to Crazy. The beginning is the story of you. And now, you said 50 years of marriage. Your profile says 4 decades. I'll give you the 50. 6 children, 9 grandchildren. I'm sure you got some pets there too. You got a lot of stuff going on. What is your next steps? What are you going to do next to push this platform to help us lead our brothers and sisters out of that darkness and into the light?
Yeah. So again, the more we can get on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So we can't do it alone. So.
Yeah, listen, we got to get the message out. I would be a very happy man if I could just disappear into the woods and never be heard from again, and live another. My wife wants me to stick around for another 20, 30 years. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Right?
That's a twofold thing, though.
You know what I'm saying? Oh my Jesus, oh my God, right? I'm already collecting my AARP checks, right? This wants me to 20, 30 years. He said, I'd be happy to do that in the middle of nowhere, sitting in nature and banging on my native drum and listening to the wind, right? Yeah, well, that's not the mission that God sent me out for. So anybody and everybody that wants to put me on their podcast, put me on their radio show, television program, whatever it takes to get this message out there. I've got a unique gift of being able to tell the story, and an even uniquer gift in doing it with some amazing facts while throwing in as much humor as I can, right? Trying to lighten up one of the toughest discussions we're ever going to have, if not the toughest discussion, which is what? Talking about ourselves. When are we going to start talking about ourselves, right? Well, that's what we need to do. We need to start telling our stories. So I'm going to say it to you like this. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out, how do we get all the veterans post-World War II to learn from the veterans that came back from World War II? all of them, including my one of my two grandfathers. One landed on the beach in Normandy, second wave, second mechanized. Right. The only thing he was mad about was that not only did he have to march all the way to Berlin, he didn't say he made it to Berlin. He said he made it to the outskirts of Berlin, but they turned his ass around and made him march all the way back to France to get on a damn boat. Okay.
What?
That's what he was pissed off about. But what he said was, and what I've listened to a few other points of view from our World War II vets, not a lot of them left. And I write about my grandfather, one of my grandfathers in A Date with Suicide. Yeah, it's a great story about him. They spent, what is it, a month, 2 months, 3 months getting on a boat and then cruising back here. And what did they do? They talked to each other. They were surrounded by people, by fellow vets from Army, still in the military, right?
Yeah.
That did what? Spent 1, 2, 3 months transiting back to this country and talking out what happened to them. The hell else are we going to talk about? The broads? Well, there ain't no broads on these boats, right? As my grandfather would say. Okay? No, there was nothing to do. It was us. We were telling war stories. We were telling our war stories, as he says. Right?
And they were in one of the most contested fights for probably 7 months straight, fighting their asses off to keep their brothers on the right and left alive, and themselves, of course, as they battled all the way to Berlin, and then of course had to walk back to France. Jesus, but
and lost a couple 100,000
men
of their teammates, right? Okay, so my point is that if that helped them overcome what we're facing, and you look at post-World War II, especially Vietnam, because nobody talks about Korea, and that's sad, but we don't forget about it. It's just no Korean vets really pop up anywhere. But the Vietnam vets, for the longest time, and I'd have to ask Rick Weidman, number 2 at VVA. He was the guy in charge of Vet Force when I spent 10 years on that board. He said to me at one point, he goes, Vietnam veterans 60 years and older are the highest suicide rate in the country. Okay, now he told me that about 10, 15 years ago. Okay, right now, I'm not sure what the number 1 is. I know the number 3 rate of suicide is our female vets. All right, and we can get into a long discussion about that. But I want to bring it back to my point, and I'll kind of try to back it up a little bit. World War II, they spent 1 to 3 months taking a slow cruise back on a ship filled with combat veterans, all talking to each other, right? Let's just use the word all, at least most of them were, right? Okay. We've never had that since. Never.
All right.
Okay. You listen to the Vietnam guys, they got pulled out of country and sent home, right? You look at me, I was escorted to the gate. I was a top secret clearance in charge of $1 billion submarine, right? I was a division chief, and not chief, but a head of a division. And then boom, I'm outside the gate looking in going, what the hell happened? Right? No transition, no way to talk about it. Then I got thrown into the VA system. By the way, thank God for the Vietnam era folks who got the VA improved, for us, and look at what they had to deal with, right? So you put all these things together and it comes down to one thing. We're not talking about it. Why aren't we talking about it? Because there's no time, there's no space, and there's nobody standing up and saying, look, man, it's okay to talk about it. So I'm here to tell you, it's not only okay to talk about it, but write your story down, write it into a letter to yourself, write it to your children, to your wife, to anybody you want. You don't have to publish a book, but if you want to get it published, reach out and talk to me. All right. Don Dunn, he wrote one of the best books I've ever read. If you look at mine, listen, these things are borderline novels. This one is a novel. Okay. But his book is a 3/16 of an inch thick, and the chapters are 3 pages long, if that. And he is so on point with his whole life, from enlistment to present day. He hits it in very, very basic terms. It is one of the most powerful books I've ever read. So if you want to understand what I'm talking about the basics of telling your story, grab Don Dunn's book. Rich, you got to put that up there for him. I don't have it in front of me. I think I left it upstairs.
I'm trying to look for it here.
Don Dunn. I can't remember the damn title of it. Too busy telling you all my titles, right?
I had him on the show too.
Great dude, man.
Yeah.
Great dude. 20-something years.
Yeah, real good dude. It's not Echoes of War, is it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You can get it on Amazon.
It's on
I've been pumping that book as hard as I can. It is a great book for not just veterans, but any family members, especially spouses. Okay. And again, the books that I write, more non-veterans read the books that I write than veterans. Right. I've had so many mental health professionals, kids, wives, spouses reach out and say, I have an understanding now of what my husband, my father is going through or went through because of what I put in writing.
Yep. See that? And it helps. You help one, reach one, teach one. We always say here all the time. And if that helps, it helps that one person, and that one person may help others as they go forward with the lessons learned. I just shared the link to Donald Dunn's Echoes of War in the chat, so it should go up on all of our social media accounts at this time. So you should be able to reach out and grab that. It's only $5. It's probably a pretty good $5 investment right there.
It is. It is. By the way, I hope you're plugging my book over there, Richard. Don't make me fly a drone over your house.
I'll take it out, but I will plug yours here in a second. I have all your links are in the actual.
Hey, you're not supposed to tell anybody you got rocket launchers in your backyard.
People think that anyway. So I don't start the story. I just go with it.
Sounds right. Sounds right. Sure.
Here's the link to your website going across the bottom right there. And all your links to your book is on there as well.
DeepWallFleming.com.
Yep. And then Vet Wellness as well.
Yeah, if you want to find me on X, Vet Wellness, you want to find me on Facebook, Deep Paul Fleming.
They said you look like someone in the chat said you look like Goldberg from WWE. The wrestler.
Say that again.
They said you look like Goldberg from WWE. Someone in the chat just said that.
Well, at least you didn't say I look like the girl that Randy Macho Man Savage used to date. So, okay, you know that. I'll take anything but that.
You got Goldberg. That's a step up. They gave you some props then.
Cool.
Let's see your book page. I'm not sure why that didn't load. Here we go. Get that up there for the audience. And while I'm posting these up here, is there anything any advice you'd give the audience? We have veterans and non-veterans in the audience, of course, that would help them to maybe reach down inside, get the intestinal fortitude to start writing their story or start just talking more about themselves to help themselves get better and making move on to better things.
Yeah. First, for my fellow vets, take a note from Donald Dunn's book, right, and from his preaching, if you will. The story that you have in your head isn't even remotely close to what your spouse, your children, your family think of you or of what your thoughts are about your time in the military. Okay. It is night and day. To a veteran who has sat down and told their story, a portion of their story to their spouse, they have all said the same thing. It wasn't even close. What was in my head was a nightmare. What I told them and what their response was light years away from reality. Meaning, what we fear is our own mental issue. Our spouses don't see it that way. They come back, our family, they come back and see compassion and love, and they are thankful that you're telling the story. Now, listen, if you're a combat guy and you've been in the blood and guts, you don't need to get into any of that. Okay, you just don't. There's if you want to tell somebody that, knock yourself out. But that's not what's important. And when you read my book about boot camp was a walk in the park for me. Okay, but one of the guys in my boot camp company tried to kill himself because he couldn't take getting yelled at. Okay, now it wasn't until I wrote my book on the date with suicide that it really kind of clicked with me that it changed from, I used to be pissed off at this guy because he cost me time in my rack, right? In boot camp. All right. So I was pissed off at him. But when I wrote the book, it dawned on me. It's like, holy hell, getting yelled at was so severe for this guy. He had to try to take a slight, he just cut his wrists up. Okay. Wow. And this is a tough kid from the Bronx. He was a tough kid, right? But he couldn't take it. Mentally, something happened. So as veterans, we even telling a story of boot camp opens people's eyes. Okay. You're a veteran. You're not a civilian. Stop trying to be a civilian. Be a veteran and let the civilians be a veteran. Stop trying to be something we are not. We're veterans. We're in a whole class all by ourselves. Let's enjoy being a veteran and just do our best to fit in with civilians, because civilians ain't going to fit in with us. It's just two different worlds. Now, for the civilians, when a veteran starts to talk, here is the one thing you must do. Shut up. Don't say a word. Just listen. Nothing more. A veteran doesn't want you to tell them anything. If they're going to talk, they just want to be heard. Nothing more. They don't want your opinion. They don't want your feedback. They don't want your input. When they start talking, just listen. I know it's difficult. I get it. I've been married for 50 years. Okay? It's difficult, but you can do it. Because if you keep this one thing in the back of your mind, the second you open their mouth is the second they stop talking. Don't forget that. You open your mouth, the veteran will stop talking. Period. Full stop. You will break his or her train of thought, and they will never go back down that path the way they had planned it. So just be quiet and listen. I can't tell you how many times a vet's called me up and said, I need to talk. Remember, who's your Randy? Okay. Remember that veteran that called me and I said, I'll see you in a week? No. When a veteran calls, I move. Okay. And I can't tell you how many times I've sat there and done this.
Yeah, just listen.
Just listen. Okay. If they want your response, if I want your response, I'll say to you, what do you think? Or can you help me by answering the, okay? But they don't. Veterans speak very plainly, very matter of fact, and they are telling you a story that doesn't need to be interrupted. How you feel about that statement, Rich?
I think that's awesome right there. And I agree 100%. A lot of people, they listen to answer instead of listen to hear. And that really perturbs me 100% when everything you say, it has to be something they did better or know something better. And it just stops me completely. And I just, okay, whatever. I'm going to go do something else now. Because like you said, your train of thought's gone and I'm done with the game at that point.
Listen to answer. What was the other thing you said?
You should
not listen.
They don't listen to hear, they listen to answer.
Yeah, you're right. I love that. Listen to hear. Yeah, I'm gonna steal that from you. Do I have your permission?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, you got to stop listening to answer. You got to listen to hear.
Yes. And that I think that once everyone starts practicing that, we'll all understand what everyone's saying. It might stop some other problems that are going. Not all problems can be stopped by that, but maybe some will be stopped.
See, if we can, once we can get this on a roll, I know it's not only going to help our fellow veterans, but I'm going to say this quietly so that any spouses listening don't hear, okay? It's also a tricky way to get your wife to stop talking when you're trying to tell her something. Okay, say, I've got to tell you something about my time in the military. Ready? And they go, remember the rules, right? You can't answer, you can't talk. You just have to listen. Then you can get your whole whatever it is you had to say, and okay, without worrying about it being interrupted. All right, yeah, I like that one. I like that one, baby.
That'll be our first win in a long time, gentlemen. So there you go.
Remember Tim Allen and the Tool Man when Al would break out the sign that you can send your complaints to Al. Send your complaints to Rich if you don't like what I said to all the military spouses out there.
It's all my fault. Thank you, guys. D-Paul, you also told the audience if they want to get into publishing to contact you, what's the best way to contact you? Is it through the website or is it your email?
Yeah, you can get me through the website. It comes to the same thing. It comes to my email. But if you want to reach out to me, you can hit me up at dpaul@blackhawkbooks.com. You can send me a message on Vet Wellness or D. Paul Fleming on Facebook. But if you want to hit me directly, email is dpaul@blackhawkbooks.com.
I just put that in the chat, everyone, so you can copy and paste that, put it in your to-do list. So when you are writing your story or writing anything and you want to get published, you can talk to D. Paul and they'll tell you the right direction to go or what you need to do to help yourself out in that situation.
Yeah, we're working on my wife does a lot of the legwork here, but we've been reaching out to a number of the bookstores, and right now a couple of the Barnes and Nobles and some of the other ones are putting a little section aside for veterans books. Okay,
Nice.
so that actually started with Bob Dunn. He's the one that kind of planted that seed and got me motivated to start helping veterans. Not just get it published, but self-publishing. Again, it's a nightmare when you're figuring it out. But once I figured it out, it's pretty easy. Okay, but what I'm trying to say is we're working behind the scenes to get veterans' stories on the shelves in bookstores in its own section. So if you guys know the Navy SEAL who wrote he writes under Jack Carr, right? And you guys know him, all right? He's got his book deal and his movie deal. It's not Reacher, is it? Whichever series was based on his books. We got to get him to back us up and get these bookstores to put his vet, as a vet in our section, right?
Yeah,
there's 10 different vets that Donald Dunn has put together their books, and we're kind of working behind the scenes to do something to get them all in the bookstores. But there's 50 more veterans that are writing books right now, and I'm working hard. The point behind starting Black Hawk Books was that would be the focal point for veterans to kind of put all of their books in one website, so that any veteran, any non-veteran can go there, but it's a veterans kind of clearinghouse. So everybody can put their book on one site, and then we can kind of try and push them into the shelves on independent bookstores and Barnes and Nobles, which is great now because Barnes and Noble changed their policy to let the individual store managers pick and choose what they want to put on their shelves, and that happens through Ingram Sparks. Long story, but I know how to get it done.
All right. I published through Ingram Sparks my second book, Out of the Darkness. My first book, 13-Step Guide to Success. I just did it all on Amazon. So I learned a little bit from doing Amazon and went to Ingram Spark the second time. And my sister-in-law is a manager at Barnes & Noble in New Jersey. So maybe I can get her to nudge, wink, wink, get my book in there.
Is she anywhere near Cherry Hill?
She's in Clifton, I believe. My brother will chime in here in a second.
Clifton? Is that Haddonfield, Cherry Hill, where the old horse track was?
No. She's North Jersey.
North Jersey?
Yeah, Cherry
Hill. The Sopranos. She's hanging out with the Sopranos.
Yeah, a lot of that was filmed right where they live. So.
Hey, what am I telling you, huh?
She's in Menlo Park now. That's what he just said. So.
Well, how come we're not in her store? Let's get my books in her store. Let's get your books in her store. A veteran section.
I'm sure.
Make us send Vinny down there. Vinny and the Guidos are going to come. We want to get our veterans in the store.
That's like my best friend. One of our best friends growing up was Vinny. So,
Vinny and the Knuckle Draggers. How's that work? Good Lord.
He said
it's what kind of show you got us driving into here, Rich?
We're going down a different path right now.
Good Lord. We're supposed to be talking about veterans and helping them. And you
now,
got us playing with the Knuckle Draggers.
Look what you did to us here. You made us go all Marine and stuff. Between the two of us, we turned into Marine somehow. But TP, this has been great chatting with you tonight. We got a whole hour of talking. That was awesome. I think the audience got a lot out of it. And I think we can have other conversations about getting more veteran books out there to put into the stores as possible as well.
I think you just tossed to me, and I wasn't sure what to do, so I dropped the ball. Sorry, Rich. my fault. My fault. Sorry.
You're good. You good. You're thinking about the next thing you have to do tonight for your wife. So, yeah.
You know what? It's an hour past my bedtime, so let's get this thing over with. All right. I'm an old guy.
Right.
I'm an 8 o'clock bed. My wife's up there with my warm milk waiting to tuck me in. So let's get on with this.
And your last cookie. I got it.
Damn right. Remember, I was a submarine sailor, man. We were spoiled people, right?
Definitely. D-Paul, great chat tonight. I look forward to chatting with you in the future.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. Keep the faith, people. Keep moving forward.
Outstanding. Have a good night.
This message is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Did you serve in the military? If so, you can obtain a free lifetime pass to more than 2,000 federal recreation sites. These sites are located across more than 400 million acres of public lands. including national parks, wildlife refuges, and forests. The lands host activities to fit any lifestyle: hiking, biking, fishing, camping, and much more. Gold Star families are also eligible for these free lifetime passes. Plus, they cover entrance fees for a driver and all passengers in a car, or up to 3 additional adults at sites that charge per person. Obtaining one is easy. Just go to the National Park Service website, nps.gov, or the National Park Service app.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because we are
Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation.